Hello and welcome. I'm your host, Neil Howard, here on Health Professional Radio. Thank you so much for joining us again. Medtronic recently announced the launch of its newest drug-eluting coronary stent, the Onyx Frontier Drug-eluting Stent, or Onyx Frontier DES. Joining us here from Medtronic is Ronan Rogers. He's going to discuss the Onyx Frontier. It's designed to improve deliverability and increase acute performance in the most challenging cases of patients with coronary artery disease. Welcome to Health Professional Radio, Ronan. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Neil.
Well, tell us a bit about yourself and your role at Medtronic.
Yes, so I am a Senior Director of Research and Development, and I work in terms of developing new technologies to treat coronary artery disease, and we have a portfolio of products within Medtronic to do that. I lead a global team. I'm based in Ireland, in Europe, but I lead a global team of engineers who develop those products.
Now, I mentioned that you've just announced this Onyx Frontier, this new DES, Onyx Frontier DES. Tell us about this coronary stent announcement. Why is it so significant?
Yeah, we're really excited to announce the launch of our new Onyx Frontier coronary DES. And I suppose, it treats coronary artery disease. And I think it's good to kind of reflect on, the evolution of the technology and kind of the challenges that coronary artery disease has in terms of global healthcare. Jeez. So if you reflect on the global landscape, 60% of deaths globally relate to four key chronic diseases, which are diabetes, obesity, cancer, and heart disease. And in terms of heart disease, coronary artery disease is the number one cause of death. 9 million people a year die from coronary artery disease. And it's estimated about 120 million people globally have coronary artery disease at the moment. Typically, in terms of the stenting technology or that therapy, about 3 to 4 million people annually are treated with some form of intervention with stent technology. So I suppose that's the kind of the scale of the challenge and the scale of the therapy at the moment. In terms of reflecting on the journey to where we are today, I suppose, this therapy starts to evolve in the late 1970s. So I suppose the standard of care in the late 1970s was the CABG procedure, which was essentially the coronary artery bypass graft, which is essentially a very invasive open heart surgery procedure to address blockages on the arteries of the heart, where you essentially bypass it with a graft from to let the blood flow past that blockage. In the late 1970s, doctors started to use catheters with balloons on the end of those catheters to open those blockages, which was essentially moving from a very brutal invasive procedure to a minimally invasive procedure. And then through the kind of mid-2000s, stents started to come into therapy. So a stent is essentially putting a metal scaffolding on the end of that balloon, that catheter, and that scaffolding essentially is delivered into the coronary artery to effectively, dilate that blockage and then hold that blockage open. Unfortunately, with both of those therapies, they required there was some level of, re-intervention of certain amount of patients. So, for example, 30 to 40% of patients treated with a balloon, in the early stages of that therapy evolution, had to go back to hospital for a second or third procedure. Similarly, with patients getting, stents initially, about 1 in 5 had to go back to hospital setting to get a follow-up procedure. So I suppose the next stage of evolution of the technology was the addition of a pharmaceutical drug to the stent to effectively stop some of those requirements to go back for a reintervention. And what was happening was when you put an implant in the body reacts to it, you get a proliferation of cells, and essentially while you're trying to open the blockage in the coronary artery, the cell proliferation caused the artery to essentially close down again. So putting this drug on the stent prevented that cell proliferation and produced really excellent results in terms of opening the blockage and keeping that blockage open. So essentially from about 2005, 2006, drug-eluting stents became the new kind of standard of care. And for the last 15 years, that technology has improved year on year, in terms of the performance of the stent itself, the drug, and also, the catheters to deliver the technology, to the right side where the blockage was. And it's important to reflect on the technology itself. This is, a very, very, small technology. These stents are crimped down to less than 1 millimeter in diameter when they're introduced into the body, typically through a small puncture access in the femoral artery or on the wrist. And then they're delivered with a catheter, which is effectively about, 5 feet long to a very precise location, a blockage on the coronary artery in the heart. And then the physician, and the cath lab team, are very skilled in terms of positioning the right size stent in the right location to open that blockage on the coronary artery. So a very, very skilled, team to do this, but also, really, really, mature technology that the technology has matured to a very mature state over the last number of years. So what we're really excited about is, there was a perception that this technology was beginning to top out in terms of performance. And we have some really, bright engineers in Medtronic, and they've come up with some new technology that has actually surprised us all and produced this incremental performance improvement, which really allows us now to treat much, much more difficult cases, that typically the current technology would be unable to treat. So that has a number of benefits. Number one, it allows, more patients to be treated with this life-saving technology, and also, I suppose, makes the more standard cases easier for the physicians so they can be much more efficient with their time and treat those patients much, much more easily. So that's really why we're excited about the launch of this new Onyx Frontier stent.
Now, what makes this particular stent different from other Medtronic coronary stent devices? Is it just that it's drug-eluting, or are there different types of DES stents building on your previous technology?
Yeah, so what's different really are two things. Number one, it's lower profile. So we can get this stent to locations in coronary arteries that other stents could not get to. So typically coronary arteries have an internal diameter of between 6 millimeters and 1 millimeter. But when you have disease in that artery, the arteries can be blocked, or they can be very tortuous. I have lots of twists and turns. So having a low profile device allows you to get to locations that potentially larger profile devices can't get to. And secondly, we've made it significantly more flexible. So again, that allows you to navigate the really tortuous paths to get to these blockages in the coronary artery. So they're the two key features that have differentiated this product from predicate Medtronic devices, and also obviously the competitors in this space as well. But we're also building on a very proven track record in terms of this technology in the field. So this is iterative development on very, very strong clinical evidence and proven field performance of this product in the field over the last 15 years.
Explain to our listeners the types of difficulty that would cause someone to have to go back for a follow-up. What was it in the early days that was causing these follow-ups without the drugs?
Yeah, so when you have a blockage, obviously the standard, the procedure at the time was to deliver a stent to essentially dilate that blockage and leave that scaffolding in place. That scaffolding was essentially a metal with no coating on it, so essentially just a bare metal. The body obviously reacts to that implant, and you get effectively a cell proliferation or a buildup of cells around that metal implant in the artery. And that cell proliferation, unfortunately, caused the blockage essentially to reoccur in the artery. So what we have done in Medtronic is essentially introduced a drug to that stent scaffolding. It's called a zotenolone drug, which is essentially an anti-proliferative drug. And that really stops that cell growth and reblockage of the artery. So that's the big evolution. And drug-eluting stents was the single biggest event in the medical device space over the last 15 years. The huge growth area, and certainly a huge impact in terms of improving patients' lives around the globe because of that single evolution in terms of adding that drug to the stent. So it was a huge leap forward in terms of the technology.
Give us a website where we can learn more about Medtronic, if you would.
Yes, you can go to www.medtronic.com to learn about not alone coronary artery disease and our products, but also Medtronic's broad offering in healthcare.
Ronan, thank you so much for joining us here on Health Professional Radio. It's been a pleasure speaking with you.
Thank you, Neil.
You've been listening to Health Professional Radio. I'm your host, Neil Howard, in conversation with Ronan Rogers, Senior R&D Director at Medtronic. Audio copies of this program are available at hpr.fm and healthprofessionalradio.com.au. You can also subscribe to the podcast on iTunes. Listen in, download it, SoundCloud, and be sure and subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com, Health Professional Radio.